We're joined by Senator Eric Schmitt of the great state of Missouri. He's also got a new book out, The Last Line of Defense, How to Beat the Left in Court. It is out today. Senator Schmitt, thanks for being here with us.
It's great to be back with you guys.
Well, let's talk a little bit, if we can, about law enforcement, because you were the attorney general in your state of Missouri. Now, St. Louis has had a crime problem for quite some time, and I'm sure that was a focus of some of your efforts at the state level. If you had the writ, the support, the backing of the federal government, whatever could be brought to bear, Trump administration saying, let's clean up crime in St. Louis and we'll give you whatever resources you need at the federal level to do it, could you do it? What would change? How would it work?
Well, I think one thing is you'd get some of the federal law enforcement officials out of Washington, D.C. and get them out into the country. I think Cash Patel has talked about this, and I think senior leadership of the Department of Justice has talked about this. So there's just too many, honestly, of those folks are in D.C. and they're not helping, take out the bad guys across the country. Sadly, they've been spending a lot of their time, and we talk about it in the book, Last Line of Defense, in the censorship effort, Russiagate, all this nonsense, all the man hours been wrapped up in this political weaponization of the DOJ as opposed to fighting crime. The other thing is one of the things that we did when I was Attorney General was relatively was unprecedented at the time. We created something called the Safer Streets Initiative, where we had deputy attorney generals in our office deputized as assistant U.S. attorneys. So we added to the capacity of prosecuting federal crime when you have, let's just say you have a prosecutor in St. Louis. Now, she's gone, but Kim Gardner was a Soros-backed prosecutor. If they don't want to do their job, then we worked with the U.S. attorneys to go take on carjackings and things like that. So it was a really successful program. When Biden came in, ironically, he scrapped the program because he just, this just was not their focus. So I'm glad President Trump's in there. I'm glad, he's getting his U.S. attorneys. That's going to be kind of next up when we get back to get these U.S. attorneys in place across the country, and I think that'll help.
Are you stunned that Democrats seem unable to break the reflexive opposition to anything Trump says, even when he says things that are super, super popular with most normal people in the country? Keep men out of women's sports. Let's have less violent crime in Washington, D.C. Hey, I'm trying to do whatever I can to stop people from getting killed in Ukraine in the war there. All of these things don't seem particularly political to me, yet Democrats have so bought into Trump is Hitler, Trump is going to start World War III, whatever negative you want to associate it with it, that they seem unable to acknowledge that he actually has a lot of good ideas.
Yeah, I think it's less political, Clay, and it's more psychological at this point. It truly is. It truly is a psychosis, and Trump derangement syndrome is real, and it manifests itself in just some crazy ways. I mean, you gave a couple of examples. They're already actually taking criminals off the street in Washington, D.C. Carjackings have been up 500+% in 5 years. Clearly something needs to be done, but they don't want him to do it. You've got a president who has the confidence and the strength to actually try to broker a deal to end the bloodiest war in Europe since World War II, and they just try to undercut him at every turn. And I think the classic example, which is why I don't think they've hit rock bottom yet, is this issue of illegal immigration. I mean, they cannot help themselves. Chris Van Hollen goes to El Salvador and has margaritas with an MS-13 member because they hate Trump so much. It's bizarre, but I think they've got a couple more election cycles in them where they're going to continue to lose before they wake up. And this is just no longer the party of Harry Truman or even Bill Clinton. This has been captured by the radical left.
Now, you were part of some of the battles, legal battles, that the forces of constitutionalism and the rule of law, but also Republicans and Trump supporters were involved in recent years. I know that's something you deal with in the book. How should we view the fact that they brought 4 criminal cases against a president? They held those prosecutions specifically so they would occur in an election year. I mean, on the one hand, Senator, it's, well, Trump is president and all's well that ends well. But on the other hand, that is a shocking precedent breach, betrayal, I would say, of the American people's trust. And they actually did it. I feel like we're still processing that happened because it happened so recently.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why I wrote Last Line of Defense, which you can get on Amazon right now, is there is a tendency, guys, I think, to now that we're we're past the fever dream. The fever broke, I think, in November 2024, this kind of crazy woke nonsense and the lawfare that was brought against President Trump to throw him in jail for the rest of his life. There's a tendency to kind of gloss all that over. But you got to remember, the dark days, and I was on your show talking about this, was why I think your audience would really like the book. This was a time of lockdowns, compulsory COVID shots, open borders, DEI struggle sessions, ESG requirements, and a censorship enterprise so vast that the Biden administration instituted that was the biggest affront to the First Amendment in American history. This is all just like in a 4-year period of time where they opened up the floodgates on all this, and we had to push back. And so while President Trump was out of power, we were able to kind of hold the line on a lot of this for the cavalry to arrive. In November of last year, it did arrive, and President Trump finished this epic, historic comeback, and we're talking about all the good things that Clay, you just mentioned, they're happening, that Democrats are still opposed to. But there's a lot of important lessons learned. I mean, whether it was, we took that vaccine mandate case all the way to Supreme Court, we won. Missouri took the student loan debt forgiveness case all the way to Supreme Court, we won. I sued 50-plus school districts in Missouri for their forced mask mandates, we won. We had the censorship case. And what that shows, and what the story is so important, is kind of behind-the-scenes look at what was it like to take the depo of Anthony Fauci? What was it like to take the deposition of Elvis Chan at the FBI, who was pre-bunking the Hunter Biden laptop story? We did all that. The point is, you got to have courage. It's a lot easier to just go to ribbon cuttings or just kind of walk along than it is when you got to stand up and fight. And President Trump, I think, has transformed the Republican Party now, certainly from the one that I grew up in, into much more of not just a working class party, but a party that's just not going to lie down. We're going to stand up. We're going to fight back. And if we do it, we can actually win. So the book is kind of a playbook on how we did it then and how we can do it moving forward.
Okay, I love everything that's happening now. I think most people out there listening do as well. Here's my concern, and you know this better than anybody because you were involved in so many of these lawsuits. All of a sudden, it's acceptable to say, hey, we believe in the marketplace of ideas. Hey, we shouldn't be rigging the algorithms. Hey, we shouldn't be artificially inserting ourselves into the public discourse and manipulating the results. Yet 2021, every social media company in America banned Donald Trump from getting on. I like to joke because it kind of brings it home. Pinterest banned Donald Trump. Pinterest. Like he couldn't share his scrapbook collages for people out there. How do we stop this from happening when Trump isn't in office and may ensure that what we are doing now is going to extend into the future no matter who the president happens to be?
Well, a couple things. One is I think there has to be accountability for some of these actions. I think I've been op-ed about this. I think you can draw a straight line. Like, ironically, Obama has immunity because of the case that was brought against President Trump, presidential immunity.
That's right.
But Clapper doesn't, Brennan doesn't, Comey doesn't. And if you can prove beyond, you have a statute of limitation issues, but you don't if there's a conspiracy. And it was an ongoing conspiracy, because if you light the fuse in a conspiracy, whatever happens a mile down the road, you're still responsible for. And these guys knew it was fake. They knew it was BS. They laundered that stupid Steele dossier into an actual intelligence report, and they tried to, not only a coup, but tried to sideline an entire first term of a president. And then, of course, that was the impetus for all of the, this is Russian disinformation, this is Russian misinformation. Everything was about Russian this, Russian that, even though it was all BS. And so I don't think we should just forget about that. I think there have to be repercussions. And as far as like social media companies, you guys know this, it's a good thing that they have something called Section 230 protections, meaning they're a platform, not a publisher, meaning they're not legally responsible if somebody has, an opinion that you disagree with on that platform. That's good for free speech, but you don't get to have it both ways. You don't get the multi-billion-dollar subsidy of being a platform where you can't be sued, but then also try to manipulate what's on your platform in an editorial-like decision. So I think they got to pick, and if they pick the wrong one, then you're a publisher, you don't have the protections. I also think a reform that would be important that I talk about in the book too is these individual bureaucrats. If you're engaged in suppressing somebody's First Amendment rights, you individually ought to be able to be sued. There ought to be an individual right of an action for an American citizen to sue you for suppressing your speech about, questioning masks and how they work for kids or not. That would change the kind of risk dynamic that currently works, because these, as you guys know, the bureaucrats aren't accountable to anybody. We need to start making them accountable to real people. So there's a few things that we can do. But what we saw, guys, in that 4-year period in particular, If that was going on somewhere else, like, the lawfare and the censorship and all this mass migration and all this stuff is being used with taxpayer dollars to fund, the State Department would be warning American citizens about that place. But that was happening here. And again, the story of the last line of defense, which you can get on Amazon now, is about standing up, pushing back. If you do it, if you got the courage, you can win. And this is a playbook of how conservatives moving forward can fight and win in the courts, which we've always kind of resisted because we thought that was their terrain.
Okay, procedurally, you're an expert on this. Democrats have a huge advantage in D.C. because they have basically a 95% approval rating in D.C. They can get any indictment they want. How do you deal with that if you're talking about bringing conspiracy charges? I don't need like a law review analysis style, but just for me and people out there who have a general sense that this is a problem, how do you rectify that?
Well, once you have a conspiracy moving forward, it doesn't just exist exclusively in Washington, D.C. It emanates out. So, for example, and I'm just using this potentially as an example, but let's just say that the raid at Mar-a-Lago was really about getting documents back that they thought President Trump had as related to the Steele dossier. I'm just throwing out a scenario here, hypothetically, Of course. If that were the case, you've got Southern Florida is where you can issue indictments. Because, again, remember, if Jack Smith is using a phony intelligence report that was generated by Brennan and Comey and Clapper, like they begin the conspiracy process and he's furthering the conspiracy in South Florida. Again, the jurisdiction that you can kind of work in gets much broader. And I think that's one area that they might look at.
Senator, appreciate you being with us. And just want to tell everybody one last time, go check out the book, which is out today, the Senator's new book. Very important, very good stuff. The Last Line of Defense, How to Beat the Left in Court. Appreciate you, sir.
All right, guys. Take care. Thank you.
Your support to the Tunnel to Towers Foundation makes a lasting difference in real lives, like the lives of the Ernst family. When U.S. Navy Chief Petty Officer Michael Ernst was killed in a training accident, Tunnel to Towers provided a mortgage-free home to his loving family. His wife, Megan, is grateful to Tunnel to Towers and supporters like you for lifting that financial burden off her shoulders. Their home is a safe space for her and her children. Your generosity will allow for that for years to come. Since Tunnel to Towers was founded in the aftermath of 9/11, the Ernst family is one of many that people like you have helped. But there's so much more to do. Many are still in need. We mustn't forget America's heroes have given so much, and together we can say thank you in a lasting and meaningful way. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers at T2T.org. That's T, the number 2, T.org.